Hi, welcome to the Mama Advocate Podcast. This is a safe place for adoptive and special needs mamas to feel less alone and find community amidst their unconventional journeys. Here, you're going to find authentic conversations from me and my guest who are parenting fully in the weeds with you. Our goal is to empower and encourage you to be the best mama you can be as you advocate for your people.
Hello, y'all.
Hello.
I'm so excited about this. I love Karindy with all of my heart. She has been such a blessing to our family. And to me, as a mama friend, she's been so encouraging and loving, and just her kindness and her gentleness with our family has been like beyond a blessing. So I'm really excited to have her here today. I'm trying to remember how we first got
So
in
we
contact.
first met because I took the Mama Systems course and loved it. Then I joined one of your office hours calls, and I basically begged you to help me with organizing my workspace. I was like, okay, this is working at home, love it. How do I make this happen at work? And so we did like a video call and everything. And you were like, well, first, the space is tiny, but we figured out I needed to put things on the walls, all this other stuff. And of course, then you were like, so do you ever work with, FASD? Do you work with kiddos who have special needs? And I was like, yes. So that is when we really started to nerd out together.
Yes. So
Yeah.
Karindy is a speech therapist, a myofunctional speech therapist. Is that the correct title?
So a speech language pathologist and a myofunctional therapist.
So it's a both and. It's
Yeah,
not
because you
one
can
umbrella.
be an SLP, a speech language pathologist who does myofunctional therapy, or you can be an OT, you can be a registered dental hygienist. Yeah. So not everyone who is a myofunctional therapist is an SLP, and not everyone who is an SLP is a myofunctional therapist. They're different trainings and backgrounds.
I knew the second one. I didn't know the first one. So it's a good clarification.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm not the only one out there that didn't know that, but whatever. All is to say, she helped us so much. She did therapy with our kiddos, and then one of our oldest of our adopted kiddos was having a bunch of sensory things going on and a whole bunch of behaviors. And so as she was kind of walking us through that process, she hooked us up with a bunch of doctors in the Houston area and just really served our family so well. And Andrew started having some sensory things. And I'll tell you from my experience, she has a much more scientific approach to tell you about what was happening. But as my experience as a parent, I was in the kitchen one day and Andrew walks in with a tooth in hand, root and all. It was the longest tooth thing I've ever seen. And he asked me about the tooth fairy and was excited because he had just pulled out one of his grown-up teeth, full out from his mouth. And I started panicking. And I was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? I mean, just did not handle that situation well at all. I was just screaming fire and running around. And I was a hot mess. And we went to the emergency dentist and we got to put it back in and he kept pointing it out and all these things. So when I told Karindy about it, she gave me all these resources, which were lovely and wonderful. But then he did it again. And I was like, oh gosh, Karindy, what is going on here? And she mentioned a correlation possibly between growth hormone deficiency and this teeth pulling. And so I was like, you have to come on here and we have to talk about this because I think this is so fascinating and interesting. I know a lot of kiddos with FASD have growth hormone deficiency as a comorbidity. That's not the case across the board, but that small birth weight, small stature, small, all the things often go hand in hand with FASD kiddos. And so, yes, she's here today, not as a dental expert, but as someone who's going to share her lived experience and things that she's encountered and seen before. So, Karindy, give us a scoop.
All right. So I love that intro. I do want to add that, human growth hormone deficiency is something we see not just in FASD. You can have it and really it be more or less a standalone thing. Now, anytime we have an issue that is related to hormones, it's going to have a cascade of effects that we see throughout the body and throughout function. So it is going to affect other systems and just how we inhabit daily life. But you can just have a human growth hormone deficiency problem be kind of your primary symptom, or not symptom, primary issue that you're seeing different providers for. So if you're listening and you're like, well, I don't have a child with FASD, it doesn't mean you might not know someone who could benefit from this information, because honestly, I'm seeing more and more kids with human growth hormone issues. Sometimes this actually means rather than a deficiency, we have too much. So you can have that as well. And this is, again, working with an endocrinologist, working usually with a neurologist, with a specialist team, because of the issues related to this, because we really get, so the pituitary gland is in charge of signaling out these hormones. We have really over 50 hormones that, we hear different ones talked about a lot, but they are signalers throughout the body that tell our body to do different things. It helps us turn on and off hunger. It helps us to turn on and off sort of that sleepiness or that arousal state of whether we need to charge and move forward. And as is the case with human growth hormone, it tells us to build and to get big. It tells us that we need to be increasing bone mass and that we should actually be layering this on. If we don't have enough of that signaling throughout the body, this is where we start to run into issues that the bone, specifically the mandible, the jaw, should be very dense. And it should not have, by the time we have these adult teeth erupting, really they should be in there solidly. They should not be able to be removed unless it's from a surgical approach, which is where you are going to work with an endodontist or a periodontist, someone who is working deeply because they actually have to excavate to get the teeth out. This is why it's so concerning. And it makes sense that you had a panic response when your son came to you in the kitchen holding this adult tooth. And this is something we have to reiterate, because if you're listening to this and you're a dentist, you might be like, no way, that didn't happen. This is the response I had a lot, guys, because I reached out after Laura told me this. I was like, let's see what we can do about this. I reached out to a lot of dentists, and so many people were like, it's not an adult tooth. It's not, until I showed them the scans. I was like, it is, guys, it truly is. This is where I started to get in more of those discussions with people who truly were listening and were like, okay, wait, this, I need to reframe a little bit and look at these scans. Those were the most helpful dentists and specialists, because they actually looked at the scans and they said, well, look at the bone density. It isn't this, we should see that it is so dark on these scans that you can't see through it, but look at it. It's actually not as developed as we would like. We can see, they even had, I had people that had concerns. They were like, what about the bones throughout the rest of the body? Does he break bones easily? Does he have this history of injury? Things like that. Because they started to see, okay, these are signs that he doesn't have that foundation that he truly should have for really good health in his mouth, let alone the rest of the body. So that is from more of that bone growth perspective. And what we're thinking of, okay, the density there, the tissue, the quality of the tissue itself is lackluster if we have reduced human growth hormone, because that signaling that should have said, put another layer on, make the cells more dense, we need more and more, it just stopped calling for that building reinforcement as he was developing. And it stopped calling pretty early on for him, which is why you guys have had to, reinforce with human growth hormone. Because how long has he been taking it?
Since he was 4 or 5.
Right. And we know that prior to that, that was really the onslaught of when that bone density should have been built.
Huh.
And this isn't to make anyone sad or go, have regret, but just to understand the big picture of what we're working with. So, this is where it's so beneficial to understand this is the case. So it's not going to be the same response that we would maybe have with bone that is set and that is strong. Even things like, okay, this is why he's able to pull it back out. You cement it in, but even the tissue around it is not as strong as it would be in a different mouth. So we're adding layers onto this. Then we get into, and I say then, it's both and. So we have the human growth hormone issue of the bone density, this not growing the way that it should, but also going back to the signaling that occurs in the brain from all those hormones and how we see this can be disruptive to that regulation state that we need to have from a nervous system standpoint to not go, what is that sensory input that I have in my mouth that's distracting me? I think I'm going to pull it out. Rather than having that inhibition in place, that regulation that he needed, he had, and here, this is, I should clarify, I'm not an expert, I'm not an endocrinologist in these things, but I work with a lot of kids who have sensory issues. I work with a lot of kids who have hormone issues. And when we see these things layer on top of each other, and when we see this connection that occurs that we need to help them address, both the an MD is going to be helping them with the hormones. And then I and an OT and a team, we're going to be helping them with that sensory approach. I'm helping from the mouth standpoint, and OT is helping more from the periphery of the hands, of the coordination of primitive reflexes. Because I know some people listening are probably thinking about that. Like, why would he be pulling that out? Maybe there's a primitive reflex at play. Yes, absolutely. In these cases, often is the case. And a primitive reflex, I'll just back up for a second, is those are going to be those basic responses that we really need in the first year and a half of life to get us through. They are brainstem responses. They are not cortical, higher thinking responses. They are just to get us through the womb, get us out during labor, help us to latch and breastfeed. And that's more or less it, to keep us alive during that first year of life. But if we don't have all of the things that we need from a nourishment standpoint, from an environment standpoint, the context, the stimulation, if he didn't get those cues, he didn't integrate them at that earlier stage. So now we have input in the mouth, such as this tooth, that is distracting. And this can trigger more of that. Okay, he did have a sucking reflex when he first came and saw me. And so that reflex, even though he had worked with a team of providers prior, it's just that much harder to get that new learning in the brain and to really address things from that primitive reflex standpoint. So working on that, anything in the mouth, what that tells us is he hasn't desensitized his mouth adequately. So he has stimuli in there. That tooth might be giving him input. Maybe it feels a little sore, just cold. He's got more input there, going to be distracted. And because of more of that compulsory type of behavior and that fixation and wanting to really target it. Again, thinking of those hormones as signals through the brain. The neurotransmitters aren't signaling, hey, let's stop that. Let's inhibit that. Executive functioning jumping in and saying, maybe don't pull that tooth. Instead, the fixation, the oral preference became foremost, and it became that driver for the behavior to just pull. So some people would be afraid of pain. However, with those hormones, we also have a reduction or a crossing of the organization of pain signaling, especially in the mouth. So think of the hang on. Am I losing you here? I'm going a little bit fast.
Well, no, I love this. I want to ask so many questions.
Okay, so I'll finish
your
the part
thought
about
now.
the trigeminal
I'll write
nerve.
them down.
And then, okay, so I will say the trigeminal nerve, which is what innervates the jaw, other parts of the mouth too, but it is the primary space in which we receive pain signaling. So when you have a crossing of pain reception in the jaw, sometimes I see this in brain injury, where someone would normally feel something to be pain, they almost feel it as soothing. Like it can be, because it's increased sensation, increased stimulation in the brain, and the brain has lost that organization, or in his case, didn't ever quite develop it to have the adequate formation of, okay, that's pain, that's pleasure, this is in between, this is just kind of nothing. He's like, I don't really have that nothing space. So pain and pleasure, they're kind of the same. If I just get stimulation in that jaw, that's going to be a really high stimulation space for his brain, which he's always craving. He's craving that because he's not internally regulated. He's going to be seeking that out. So that's where pulling a tooth makes sense. Hitting the mouth makes sense. Biting something, eating glass, eating rocks. These are kids. There can be mineral issues with that as well. But I see that. And it's, often people are horrified and they need to think it's not necessarily a psychotic issue as much as it is that it's a sensory stimulation seeking issue due to disorganization in the brain.
Just learned so much. I'm so
Okay.
grateful.
Well, I want it to be beneficial. So let me know. Sometimes learning info isn't necessarily helpful unless you're like, okay, well, what can I do with that?
Well, no, it's so helpful.
Okay.
I love the knowing about the density of the bones. It's interesting that dentists that you talked to saw that with the scans, because I
Not
saw
everyone did, which is
seen
what
two
is
different
interesting.
dentists, and neither of them have said anything. And then our orthodontist as well.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, like, I love these people. I think they're amazing and wonderful, and nobody's mentioned that to me. It's really interesting. And I'm also, because it does, even you saying that out loud of like pain and pleasure, and I'm like, no, it's crazy. Like, it just feels crazy. And I've lived it twice now, where it's like, oh my God, what is happening? It just feels crazy. It doesn't feel like I'm like eating glass. Has taken, when had our house under construction, he went and took fiberglass and ate that. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, out of the insulation. And I think he thought it was cotton candy, and things like that, that you're like, this is nuts. Like, I don't understand what's going on here. And so what you're saying makes sense. The behaviors don't make sense, but like how you're explaining it, I'm like, that makes sense to me. Is there a
The
way to
behaviors.
test that hormone, the pain and pleasure hormone?
So it's not so much that it's a hormone of pain and pleasure. It's the combination of those hormones. So and I should backtrack. The hormones that we release during pain and the hormones we release during pleasure, those are typically that you can test to an extent, and those we do know a little bit more. The problem is that signaling. So we have signaling that goes down from the brain to, in this case, the mandible or to the jaw, and then we have signaling that goes from the jaw back up to the brain. It can be a misfiring or a cross signaling from the brain down to the jaw or down to those nerve endings. It can be that the problem is they're signaling to the end point, or it can be the problem of, okay, that tooth, which has 20,000 sensory receptors in it, that it is sending signals up to the brain that should be really pain signals, but instead they're more, the brain is interpreting them. That's where things get messed up, is the interpretation.
Okay.
Is that the brain goes, oh, I think that feels good, even though it typically should register that it's pain. This is where it can be so dangerous, there are lots of cases, different root causes that can disturb our reception of pain. And this is why it's so dangerous. We need it to help us to inhibit, to stop a behavior. This is why behaviors themselves can look so crazy when we go, why would you do that? Well, if you don't have pain, I mean, really, is there anything wrong? If you don't realize that it's serrating your mouth to eat fiberglass, like, it does look like cotton candy. So, I will say, everyone, I'm clarifying, it is not cotton candy. Please don't go eat it. But, just talking about that misconception that their brain has as it interprets the world. This is why it's so key. In this case, I will say what they need really is navigating it through wonderful input with a nervous system based chiropractor to help really regulate the nervous system, getting those primitive reflexes online, which again can be a nervous system chiropractor based chiropractor, or an OT who has specific training. I would say, but it's always tricky. You have to find the ones that have that training that really, because you can find an OT who teaches him how to tie his shoes, and that's not what you need in this case. That's not that he needs to actually work on olfactory sensation and equating, okay, this sense that I'm smelling is actually this is dangerous. Like, we're training different things in the brain and the body and teaching negative and positive reinforcement of these external inputs, such as fire, such as, something that smells bad, like when you smell gasoline, do not eat it, do not lick it. Like, we might have to train those things. That's where working on danger awareness, when they don't have those signals in the brain that fire, oh yeah, that was terrible, I don't like that, I never want to have that again.
Yeah. How do you find, what do you search for in that? Or what do you
That's
even
a
like called
really,
around to therapy places and
so
say,
I would say like truly it's just calling and asking people, do you work on sensory integration and primitive reflexes? And, depending on what they have, there are other things you would ask for, but specifically for what we are talking about, that's what I would ask. And I think of some fabulous people that are out there that are doing this and really working on these things. Like in the Cortex, they have a great program. I don't know if I can give these shout outs. I don't know them, not an affiliate or anything. I'll just say like I've seen their work and I love it. Nat the baby OT, she's a great one as far as like, now that's more infants working up, but we have different programs out there. But really, it's got to be that sensory training and not being afraid to step into what might look weird, like teaching. I've had it before where they think everything smells like pickles and tastes like pickles, and so we have to work back, and we're training that because you're not going to, things aren't poisonous, aren't dangerous to you if it's all a pickle. Like there are different things that you just need to ask them, like, are they comfortable working with difficult cases, and then maybe lay it out a little bit of what is that, because you don't want someone to just back up on you as you get in. It's a lot of work, as we know, getting these kiddos to and from
yes.
therapy.
And I think I would also just like to address from my standpoint, my experience, when you say that, and I'm thinking like, okay, if I have to go tell them that my kid eats insulation or ate insulation, this was a very long time ago, lest anybody hears this. And like, even though I'm like, let me preface this by saying that don't call CPS on us about this because like not a thing, right? So him eating insulation, you're like, oh, why would you let him be around that? But it's like everything in the house could be used in a negative way to him. Like he doesn't have any filters. He doesn't have, so, I mean, it could be going out to the garage and getting gasoline. It could be going to the kitchen and finding spray on the counter that looks like Kool-Aid. And so he opens it up and drinks it. Like all these things, you're like, oh my word. And I think my first response is fear. Like, I don't want to tell anybody that because I make up that they're going to say, well, why do you have that around with a kid like that? Why do you do this with a kid like that? Like people are very quick to give their opinions on how they think they can do it better than me. And I'm sure this is the case with a lot of special needs parents. And so I just want to encourage you to kind of push through that a little bit. When I reached out to Karindy for the second time when he had pulled his tooth again, it was because a teacher had called CPS on us because she thought that he had pulled it out like in a rage and like that I had made him so angry and all these things. And I was like, no, it was just in the morning time and it was just something that happened. Like, but nobody can really understand that. So people don't understand these things and they make up stories to make that make sense. And so I hear I make up that might be terrifying for some if they've had lived experiences like me. I want you to know Karindy's on our team and play this podcast for them and let them listen to this about sensory input and all the things. So that's it.
And just to know that, because I just think, Laura, you guys have set up such an incredible environment that is regulation safe. Like it is wonderful for the nervous system in your home. What you have set up, the consistency, the way that your kids, they know their roles, they know, all of these things, that the rhythm you have given your life is phenomenal and so needed just in general. And I just want to applaud you for that because there could be so much more going on. And instead, he actually has these moments of quiet where he's able to fixate on a tooth rather than, hitting his head, doing these other things that could be more elaborate, bigger behaviors that I do see. And there's just so much that we can do. And I will say, our environment, the demands on our bodies, the inputs we're getting from so many different types of media and things like that, it is increasing the load for kids. So we're seeing more dysregulation just across the board. We are. And so it can be overwhelming, but I just want to say what we can do is just stepping back and giving really clear boundaries. So we're talking here about like eating glass and these other things, but sometimes it's just in parking lots, we're not running out into them. This is here's the park. We don't go out of this boundary. So just really getting clear boundaries of what is safe, what is not, and just thinking, oh, that's foolish. I shouldn't have to articulate that or clarify that. Just go ahead and do it. It's okay for everyone to know that we don't do this, or we do this, and just stating it and maybe feeling a little dumb. Like, why do I have to say that? Just say that so everyone knows. Okay, when we get in the car, we just check that no one's fingers are in the door before we close it. It's just little things like that that can actually help them to have the clarity. And I wish I could say that was my own idea. It was an OT. Again, this is like I'm an SLP, but I'm like talking about all the OTs because I love them. I love them so much. And they help so much with a lot of these sensory behavior issues because it truly is their scope, and it's what they hit it out of the park with. When that's truly their training and their background.
Just so grateful for you.
I'm grateful for you. And
thank you.
And I'm just thinking of all the families that you help. Again, just helping them have ticket systems, rhythms, consistency, and ways that they can expect in, what is expected of them. That is beautiful for bringing that regulation and that safety and helping to inhibit these behaviors that we right now maybe don't want to have happen because it's not beneficial for their growth and development in the long run.
Yeah, or ever.
Right. How about that? Yes.
Yeah. I do want to talk really quick about, you have some courses that you have put in, and I love this so much because I remember when we first met and we were doing therapy with my kids over Zoom, and they all had so much fun doing therapy with you, which is kind of beyond me that somebody would enjoy speech therapy so much and enjoy making funny faces and doing funny things with their tongue. But they all loved it and they all wanted to participate. They all want to do the exercises. And I remember having a conversation with you. I was like, you could totally just spur this on as a business and do courses because it's so doable at home.
Mm-hmm.
And often this is not something we're getting in speech. Like, we're not getting this consistency. I guess it would be that we're not getting the myofunctional therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the piece that we need, of like where to put your tongue and how it helps us breathe. All those things that are so, so important to our kids' sleep and behavior and all of that. You kind of condense it down for people like me who don't have a degree in speech therapy and make it doable and attainable for us. So I realize I just talked a lot about that, but will you tell us kind of more about your course and how people can sign up and where, like all the resources inside of it?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm so excited about this. It is something that I wish I'd had in place just years ago for all of my patients, all of the people that reach out. And truly it has come out of just, okay, I want to make this accessible to everyone. So it's called Myo Magic at Home. And you can find me on Instagram at biohacker SLP, and you'll see the link in my bio. That's probably the easiest way to sign up. So
in the show notes, we'll put it all down in the show notes too.
Perfect. So I would say that or you can just look up Myo Magic at Home and you'll see that what it is, it starts in April. So guys, if you're listening to this after April, I plan on launching it again, probably in the fall. So if you're like, oh, I missed the April date, go ahead and sign up for the wait list. You can use that link to sign up there as well. I am very excited. What we talk about is foundations in week 1, and that's going to be really development, what is happening in utero, what optimal orofacial or like development of the mouth and the face and really the cranium, what that looks like for sleep and mental health and eating, all these things. So that's week 1. Week 2, week 1 sets the stage, and then we get into exercises and things that you can do at home that truly are therapeutic. Now, I do like to clarify, it isn't therapy, but you're seeing a lot of the things that I do that are therapeutic. Now, throughout it, I'm telling people like, hey, go see a myofunctional therapist. If you can, go get an assessment. that is my goal for everyone. I would love that, but it's just not accessible for everyone. So what are things you can do right now? Week 2, we talk about the tongue and the jaw and how to really get the tongue elevating. Stabilizing the jaw. I explain all of that. Week 3, we talk about the lips and the nose, how to have a closed mouth with breathing, because this is what I see a lot, especially let's say someone who's used a pacifier for a long time, thumb sucking, they have that open mouth breathing. How do we correct that or help them correct that? And then the final week, we wrap it all up with the swallow. We talk about different types of cups that we can use and how we can truly facilitate amazing growth and development as we continue on through childhood and into adolescence. So it's a fabulous course. Once you take that course, you can take my toddler course as well. But I will say that you do need to take Myomagic at home first, just because toddlers, we got to have that strong foundation before we change it, because we're doing a lot of running around and bouncing off balls and everything else for the younger ages.
What I love so much about this is that, like, I find, well, at least with my life, let me just speak for me. There's so many things that I need to tackle with our kids all the time. And I feel like it's constantly changing. There's constantly more specialists, you're like, oh, now I need to go see a specialist for that too. Like, it's just always piling on. And sadly, it doesn't seem like it ever gets to be less. Like, it's not like, oh, we're now out of this, we're now out of this. It just keeps increasing the older we get. But this is a doable, like adding another therapy appointment where I have to drive 20 minutes, sit there for an hour, and then drive 20 minutes home. Like, I can't do that. Like, we physically cannot do that in our schedule, but this is doable. Like 5 minutes a day for your exercises. Like obviously the time for the course, but just the little work that you do with your kids at home is doable and attainable. And yes, if you have the ability and the means to take your kids to all the therapies, by all means do it. And if you're also feeling overwhelmed and have more than one kid and have a million different specialists, this is what you need in your life.
And I would say, even if you're like, I can't even come to those trainings, just there are amazing cheat sheets and checklists in it that I walk you through, like, do these things. This is it. So it's so doable. That's my goal. Is I have been that overwhelmed mom. That's why I took Mama Systems, guys. So let's say start with Mama Systems so you get your life a little bit easier. And then this is how you can do it at home with your own kids and really prioritize as you need to from there. That's my goal for everyone.
Man, you're a blessing. Thanks for fighting through and continuing to advocate for parents at home and just making these things accessible to everybody. So thank you.
That's my goal. Thank you, Laura, for having me on today.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Hey, I'm so glad that you joined us today. If this episode blessed you at all, would you mind leaving a review or sharing with others? This, as you know, will help other mamas find us, and in turn will bless them. Hey, thanks so much for trusting us with your time today.